This is the Griffin Realty Group Ask-A-Griffin podcast, episode number 25, Negotiation. Are you overthinking and distorting the buyer's intentions? Are you a home seller or buyer who has questions about selling or buying residential real estate, but you can't find an easy way to get your answers? Well, then, hey, you're definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Griffin Realty Group and the host of the Ask-A-Griffin podcast. Now, to help you take immediate action to get started in the right direction, if you need to sell or buy property right now or in the very near future, you can take advantage of our free step-by-step guides waiting for you at griffincourses.com. That's GRIFFIN courses.com. All right, let's get started here. In this continued series on negotiation, I want to talk about, are you overthinking and distorting the buyer's intentions? Because the answer is yes. In the majority of the cases, in my vast experience negotiating on behalf of especially my sellers, I find that people have a lot of cognitive distortions. Now, I am no psychology expert, but I have many of them around me, including a sister who is a longtime teacher of special needs children, who is the first one that ever introduced me to this long list of cognitive distortions. And I think in business, it's very important that real estate agents understand these and that they share them with their clients so that we become aware of them. Because clearly, not coming from a psychological background in school, I didn't have any perception that this was as heavy a problem as it is. So the first point here is that cognitive distortions are in fact very real during negotiation. Let me give you what I think is probably one of the biggest. On this list that I had received, it said mind reading. And I see sellers do that all the time, meaning they believe that they can read the mind of the buyer who simply submitted an offer through their agent that is nothing more than a fact sheet of what they're willing to do to open up negotiation. That's all it is. It has no life, and for the most part, it's a very standard-like form. In Massachusetts, there is a Massachusetts-approved form by the board, and you fill in the blanks for the most part, and you add a few technical things that you might be interested in adding, items that are included, other inspections, whatever is in the addenda, but it's pretty straightforward, and it is nothing more than a couple pages of facts. So to assume that immediately when this comes in, that you know what the buyer was thinking is erroneous. It's a cognitive distortion. You don't have the ability to read their mind. Now, you may have had some interaction. Maybe you were present when the buyer's agent was showing the property. Maybe your agent, someone like me, told you a few of the things that were said. But without being in a real conversation, you can't read somebody's mind. And even when you are going back and forth, especially in a negotiation, if somebody's smart, they're not going to tell you everything that they're feeling. They're not going to tell you about their intentions. I think one of the smartest things that buyers do is when they really do indeed love a property, they help avoid cognitive distortions by writing a letter as to what they feel about the property. And I've seen this work at luxury, entry level, all ranges. We have our buyers we say to them actually, look, if you really want this property, put down in paper why. We don't coach them. We don't say anything. We want raw. What do you think? And we will present that with the fact sheet so that we can avoid all of this mind reading and this distortion. Then the seller really knows how you feel and what your intent was. Let me give you an example. Let's say somebody is trying to step up to a price range where a buyer, where they that's the top of what they can afford. But yet the asking price is a little bit, out of their range, and they couldn't go higher. And they put in a letter that says, look, this is the best that we can do. They avoid the seller saying, well, they can't, it might be true that they can't afford it, but they don't want to pay us what it's worth. And they get all worked up when the truth is they'd be happy to take that because they don't realize they're more emotionally interested in passing it off to somebody who will love it, who will care for it. And that extra delta between what the buyer can do and what the seller was hoping for is not enough to change anybody's life one way or the other, and they come together and do the deal. I see that all the time because we represent both buyers and sellers in different transactions. So that's what we explain everybody. That's what you should do. Okay. So that's one technique for the buyer, but in most cases, that's not going to happen. So as the seller, you need to stop reading into this unless you have a concrete piece of evidence, a text, an email, whatever it might be, where there is additional written fact that says, we did this because, we think this because, then you have fact. But all of this anxiety that wells up when we are negotiating the sale of our home, you have to understand that is the ultimate underlying trigger for all of these cognitive distortions. Now, I'm not going to go down a whole list of them, but it's a pretty long list. Absolute thinking. It's the all or nothing thinking, where we make an absolute statement. Oh, we'll never sell it, they say when they see the lowball offer. That's a cognitive distortion. Overthinking. Well, they probably did this because that, and they're all distortions. So what we have is just this basic 1-page, 2-page, 3-page offer, whatever it might be, that triggers all of this because we're anxious. And so by controlling that anxiety, we can bring it down and just say, okay, here's where it's at. Now, again, with our sellers, before they even hire us, we introduce a plan that talks about the negotiation phase. You're listening to one piece of that plan. Right now, this podcast is a piece of that plan that prepares you in advance, with or without us. It prepares you in advance to understand this will be very real during that point, okay? So the next point I want to say here is, because it's a plan, don't try to control the business process of the market simply trying to find its price. Well, what the heck does that mean? Well, it means this, is that we're not selling something that is so commoditized, meaning one is just like the next, meaning one house is exactly like the next. One orange is really like an orange. You see, we don't have that benefit. And every house is different, especially if it's been lived in, because it is staged differently, painted differently. Even if it's the same model side by side, one's the left side, one's the right side. Sun hits it differently. You get my point, right? So this is a business process, and it's market making. So, and people want to explain away real estate agents who are good at what they do. You know what we do when we're at our best? We make the market. We teach you these things. We are good market makers. We don't leave you guessing. We teach you how to go into the market without having tremendous bouts of anxiety. So we're market makers, meaning what? A buyer comes in, and depending on the experience level of the agent, we don't know whose perception is writing the offer. We don't know who's in control as your listing agent until we know a little bit about the situation. So we can guess, but until we get something in writing as the real estate professional, we don't really know where somebody's coming from. And this is one of the mantras I always have, is say, look, this is just how it works. Every buyer is as different as every house. The process that they need to go through to come to whatever price they're really willing to pay, not where they start, but what they're really willing to pay. Don't try to control that. Go with it. And the way that you go with it best is by being properly prepared before this ever happens. Knowing, why did you and your realtor price it where you did? Did you leave any room for flexibility? You should always. As far as flexibility, maybe not even on the price, but just your willingness to counter and say, look, we appreciate it. Unfortunately, it's not enough for us to move on. We really need to get full price. That's flexibility. It's flexible thinking, because you're not getting defensive because of all these cognitive distortions making you really angry, frustrated, and just saying the wrong thing. Because what you're trying to do when all of those things come in is you're trying to control the whole process, and you can't. You can't. You can't control the whole process. You just became a part of it, and you're only one part of it. Think about it. If there are two agents, buyer and seller, if there are buyers, and it's a family, and you're a family, there are all these parties involved in this negotiation. So it becomes very difficult to navigate that. But if you're trying to control it, all you're doing is giving yourself fits and starts. So you really just want to try to calm down. Look at the fact in front of you. Look at the facts that you used to start this and respond kindly. If you want to get all frustrated, I'm not going to give it away. That's actually the verbiage that is birthed from anxiety through cognitive distortions out of your mouth as a seller. I'm not going to give it away. Well, the only way to give away a house is to give away a house. Here's the keys. Here's the deed. Let me sign it over. You see what I'm saying? That's that all or nothing absolutism in our statements that come from cognitive distortions. That's the verbiage that bubbles up when we do it. So I'm warning you, don't do that. Be better prepared and just calmly respond, because that buyer may, in fact, not be able to do the deal. They may not see the true value in it. Or, more importantly, they might be the beginning of a process where you need to become realistic and your agent as to where you started, because the market is pulling you always towards reality. Look, reality is buyer says yes, seller says yes. That's a deal. That's the market finding its water level or price level for your property. So it's a process. Stop trying to control it. Just be an intelligent part of it. The last point here is, and I learned this a long time ago, it's this concept of zero-based thinking. Go all the way back to why you thought about this, called your realtor, had them come over, go through their plan, and then you decided to go. There's a reason why, and that's zero base, meaning the start. If you were to go relist your property all over again, would you do it? And this is why at the Griffin Realty Group, we ask clients, even before they're clients, why are we here? Why are you going to sell this property? Because if they don't have a big enough reason why, we know that when it gets to the emotional part of negotiation, it's going to become very difficult for us, for them, for the buyers, for everybody. So you must have a why, so that during these cognitive distortive moments, go to zero-based thinking as the antidote for all of this anxiety. And just go back and say, okay, calm down. If I can get this deal done, it's because I wanted to move to X or to Y, or I wanted to improve my financial position. Whatever the case may be, that will be the best antidote. You will calm down, and you will find that you can calm those cognitive distortions. All right? And that prevents or helps you not be your own problem. Let me say that again. Oftentimes, sellers become their own problem because these cognitive distortions get so out of control and they get so anxious that they actually chase the buyers away. So this is a very important subject, critical. In fact, this is the number one spot when I am dealing with my personal clients that I am focused. Because if they have a big enough reason why, I'm a good market maker, I will get them the best price possible in that market circumstance that we all find ourselves. But they must play their role too. They must. And I don't want them to become their own problem. So here it is up front before you ever become our client or anybody's client. All right, let's go back over these points. And the question starts off with, are you overthinking and distorting the buyer's intentions? And you go through that process by recognizing, number one, that cognitive distortions are very real during negotiation, especially mind reading and all or nothing thinking. There's too much absolute feeling when you don't have that fact. Two, don't try to control the business process of the market finding its price. It will tell you what the real price range is within just a couple of percent very quickly if you stop trying to control it. And remember, lastly, the third point is, why are you selling in the first place? Keep going back to zero base or the starting point so that you can overcome you becoming the problem to getting what you want. To summarize the key point, because a real estate transaction can be a very emotional process, it's easy to allow cognitive distortions to interfere, which is a really simple business negotiation. All right, remember, you can take immediate action to get started in the right direction if you need to sell or buy property right now or in the near future by getting our free step-by-step guides at griffincourses.com. That's Griffin, Griffin courses.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen so that you don't miss out on any insights each time we upload an episode. We also post all of our episodes on our social media channels. So remember, you can just turn on the notifications for Griffin Realty Group and you won't miss the reminders. We'd also appreciate it if you would share our content with other people and comment here as well so that we know what you're thinking about this. What are your challenges that you feel when these questions are asked and then we answer them? Thanks for listening, but remember, nobody's coming for you, so you have to take action and get started on your own plan to help you buy or sell your property properly. And we will see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.